So, hi everyone. Like I said, I'm Ben. I'm with the Public Works Department here in Sun Prairie. So, just wanted to give kind of a brief overview of what we do here in Sun Prairie. I've also got J.R. Brimmer. He's our fleet supervisor and has been with the city for an extended period of time. So, has kind of seen it all in terms of what we as a department have done in terms of our salt usage and our winter operations here in town. Quick overview of Sun Prairie. So we are responsible for 354 lane miles during our snow and ice control operations. So you can see on this map, we've got our colored routes assigned to different operators. Something a little bit possibly unique about Sun Prairie is you can see the numbered areas on the northern edge of our city. Those areas are actually cleared by a contractor that we hire. So we have a private contractor out of Deerfield, Wisconsin, that we hire and utilize on an annual basis. So they actually are responsible for clearing snow on the residential side streets up in that section of our town. We then go after they're done plowing, then we'll go through and salt after them. But yeah, this is kind of our area of responsibility. Quick, here's a picture of our small but mighty crew. We utilize about 20 staff members across all of our kind of public services departments. So that's public services in Sun Prairie is our public works team, our stormwater team, our fleet maintenance, building maintenance, and also our wastewater collection team. So we utilize staff from all those departments for snow removal. So again, a little bit unique. It's not just our streets team that is responsible for snow removal. We have members from multiple departments that chip in and get the job done. Like I mentioned earlier, we also utilize a contractor for clearing snow off city streets and then also for city maintained sidewalks. So that is, we rely on contractors quite a bit here in town. Brief overview of our fleet. I'm sure many of you are familiar with kind of the vehicles we've got. We utilize 11 patrol trucks. 8 of them are single axle and 3 are tandems, all with plow and wings and spreaders, utilizing pre-wet, and they're assigned to the main roads. New this season was that we got a tandem roll-off truck with a V-box. So that has just started to be utilized by our staff. We'll often pair that with a loader to go behind a loader and salt after our loaders. Speaking of loaders, we've got 3 wheeled loaders. 3 of them have a plow and wing, and 2 are just the front plow only. And lastly, pickups that we use for courts and parking lots. Materials. So here we've got one of our salt sheds, loading that up. Like many of you, we purchase our salt off the state contract. It's not treated other than what is done at the terminal. We used to utilize anti-ice material using salt brine, calcium chloride, and Geo55. We've moved to an 80-20 mixture of salt brine and AG46 Geomelt. So we no longer utilize calcium chloride. I've included a little table at the bottom, just that's something we submitted for our MS4 permit to the DNR, but just shows kind of our monthly breakdown of salt usage from 22 and beginning of 2023, both brine and salt tonnage. So you can see, obviously, it varies month by month in terms of what we're putting down on the pavement. And JR is going to start talking kind of about our journey in terms of salt reduction and everything like that.
Sure. Okay. Thanks, Ben and Allison. So as Ben said, I'm the fleet supervisor. I've been with the city since 1998. So I have 26 years here. So I've seen the changing as we've progressed to monitoring our salt usage and looking at ways to reduce salt use, but still be able to provide a safe, traveled roads within the city there. So a little bit of history background. So, prior to 2001, All of our trucks were the standard hydraulic, manually controlled, nothing automatic. The operator had to turn them on and off by themselves. The dials, so they're very inaccurate. Even if you calibrated them, you change a dial one thing, and you could just have a huge change in the output that was done with them. So even though we tried, it was kind of hard to keep them consistent. Back then, application rates were kind of a 300 pounds per lane mile seemed to be the industry standard that everybody was using at them there. Our operators, they had full control. They could have, any rate that they wanted to put on, they could. We really, there was no control beyond us. You would have operators that were, conscious of it, and then you might have an operator that, would put it on excessive heavy and or even maybe not enough. So there's, everybody had dealt with different attitudes and different thought processes and how we should do. Our pre-wet was just a basic calcium chloride in tanks on the trucks, and it would just spray it onto the spinner. And we would only really utilize that if it was a, single digits and below temperatures. It wasn't used for all applications at that time. So in 2022, we ordered our first truck with ground speed that we added to it. And you can go to the next slide then, Ben. And when we did that, that was kind of the start of really starting to get a handle on monitoring how much salt we were maybe using and controlling, what we were using. So as you can see then, as we progressed into 25, we got our first fully automatic salter control. And then after that, as we started going on, all of our replacement trucks would have that. And then we started purchasing and retrofitting some of our older trucks with the fully automatic. So that was going to be at that time, that was a ground speed system that we could also, it was a closed loop, so that had auger sensors on it, and we would be able to do a better job of actually controlling what the application rates were. So if you set it at a number, it was actually being consistent in bringing it to you. So in 2007, then we ventured into the anti-icing. After some meetings and some discussions with some other municipalities that have started using it and some vendors, we purchased a anti-icing setup for our facilities here out at the fleet shop. So that was buying tanks and some pump and equipment that we would have to do to be able to mix our product and then get it into the trucks. So when we started then, it was a 80-10-10 mixture of salt, brine, calcium chloride, and the beet juice, as was alluded to before. And we could adjust that if the temperature was going to get a lot colder. We could change the calcium chloride content to help it work if it was going to be colder temperatures. So we would be able to play with those mixtures if we wanted. Starting in 2009, with discussions and really looking at stuff, we wanted to put something in place that was measurable and in writing to show what we wanted to accomplish and what we could do. So we did come up with a policy, and we said we will start calibrating every fall, and our pre-wet systems we will calibrate to the best of the ability at that time. And we just really started to make a focus on making sure that the trucks were ready, they were being accurate, and we were able to hopefully be able to measure what we were doing and then be able to see some of the results. So that went on for 3 years there. We really tried to get that implemented and working well. In 2012, we then started to look at adding another aspect, was some GPS tracking. So when we went with that, there was a few hurdles that we were trying to come up and get over with that. Sometimes questions were coming up back then as, well, why are you, don't you believe what I'm doing? Some of the operators. And, some of the things we talked about where we're tracking our asset. We're not tracking you, the employee, we're tracking the asset, the truck. And this started to help us really look at our routes. We have routes on maps that are drawn out, but to be able to start replaying some route tracking and seeing, how did we do routes and what might be the best. And it also gave us an easier way of how many miles and time lines that we were really seeing to do jobs and do projects. So that kind of was the start of adding one more aspect to the overall salting end of it. So in 2014, then we had our controllers, even though we were still saying that 300 pounds is a directive. We had our controllers set up. They had numbers 1 through 9 on them, and they were trying to set up to be as close as possible. That 1 was 100, 2, 200, on up. But we didn't have anything to lock out. We weren't locking anything out. The operator still could dial up, 900 pounds per mile if they so would choose. So at that point, as we were starting to get better programmed and controllers, we locked them out to a 500-pound max. So it didn't matter if they dialed it all the way up to that 9 and 10 number. 500 was the most that the system would allow it to put out. So as that went the first year, some of the things we noticed is some of the operators were a little leery about, well, what if it's a really bad intersection? What if it's really, what do I do now? It's still the blast feature function on that would still put out a heavy excess amount for that short period of time. So, handling intersections or such, we would still, we felt that we were still being able to get good coverage and still being able to get the job done. So in 2015, then we decided to, since we were seeing good results with, having them locked out and having some feedback, we thought, let's knock it down a little bit. Let's lock it out even more. So we ended up programming our controllers to only have 3 selections, 2, 3, and 4. We were still running at that 300 pounds per lane mile as the directive, but we were encouraging a couple of the operators that we had talked with to try 200 pounds. We wanted to see what the results are. So we set out some few areas and asked them to follow up and do the 200 pounds so we could see what was happening with that. So we can go on to the next slide. So as we monitored that, we were seeing that, hey, 200 pounds is still doing the job. It might be a little bit slower, but as long as we were seeing the product was working, if we were, being diligent in getting out there and getting the product applied in the optimum time frame. Naturally, if if things get a little longer and get away from you, where you get a lot of, our main street where we have a lot of compaction, that would happen with heavy traffic. We might not see it work as fast, but it still was working at 200 pounds. So in 17, we made the next step. We jumped even more. We made 1, 2, and 3 the only selections that the operators would have with those controllers, and our directive changed to 200 pounds per lane mile. Again, we monitored this over the next couple years, and we were not really seeing any negative effects overall in our operations. Naturally, you'd have spots here and there, but overall, we were still getting good results with that that lower 200 pounds per lane mile in the areas that we were focusing on. So as we all kind of talked more about it, and with our financing of how expensive things were, and they were always looking for ways that, you could save money. And then also thinking about the environment. There was a lot of, around this time is when it really started to become more in the news about a lot of the groundwater and wells and stuff with the salt, that we really, wanted to make sure that we were doing everything we could to reduce salt usage, still make the roadway safe for the residents and people in our city. So we went the next step again, and we says, let's take away that 300-pound option, and let's only allow 100 and 200. And let's look at trying to do, see what it is. We encourage the operators, let's see 100 pounds. Let us know what it is. Let's see how this is going to work. And, can we do this? We were hearing about it, that it would work, but it's kind of, you have to see for yourself that it actually works. So we can go on to the next area there. So kind of with that, this gives you a little bit of where we're currently at now. So starting up from that about 2002. So at that point, by now, all of our trucks, we're using the Force America 5100 EX controller. And we've even using that in our anti-icing trucks. All controllers are the same, so in all trucks. So regardless of who the operator might be, they're not getting into an unfamiliar truck with an unfamiliar controller. They know how all the controllers work, so there's no questions on worrying about that. So that was helping in cross training, and or if a truck is down, there isn't something that somebody has to learn different with it. So that was kind of a help in that aspect. Our anti-icing. So since we started it in 2007, we really believe and have seen that anti-icing is a huge help in the overall operation and helping be able to reduce your salt usage, and being able to handle those situations where you have a quick snow squall and it gets just enough that it would be slippery. You'd have to call people out, and now you're going out and you're spreading the salt out there. And really, even if you were spreading at a lower rate, a 200 rate, a lot of the salt probably wasn't even being consumed because there wasn't enough moisture and water there, but it was enough to make it slippery. With this anti-icing that we were seeing, sometimes that would be enough on our main roads where we didn't have to go out and call a crew out and spread some salt out there. It would handle those types of things. When we did get the typical snow, maybe a 3 to 5 inch snow, what we were seeing is, even though the snow would still pack down, it was not bonding to the pavement, which is the general idea of the anti-icing. And it would help us remove that, bonded, compacted snow from the road surface with less passes and quicker. So, if we did have an anti-icing on some of our main areas, it would get packed down right away with heavy traffic. And those of you that have, been out there, it's, you got your plow down and you're spreading salt, and a few hours later you come back and you're able to plow a little bit of it off because the salt has gotten down, but it's packed down so tight, and you lay down more salt. And it's this cycle that goes back. A few hours later, as you come back, and you might be salting that thoroughfare 3 times to get it down to where you can get it down to that bare pavement to get things off. With anti-icing, we're consistently seeing that we're doing one less pass for sure of applying the salt to it, and because we were getting better breakage off of the surface from the bonding event. So again, anti-icing, we feel, has been a big help. We've always used a mixture of our anti-icing. We've we've tried just straight salt brine. It it helps. It does work. Um, the problem with the salt brine, if once it dries out, then it's blowing away. We've all seen the white cloud dust as you're driving down the road. Whereas when using whether it was the beet juice when we first started or the Biomelt that we're using, that gives it the bonding and encapsulates that salt brine product. So when it does get the moisture, then it rehydrates itself and it hasn't all blown away. So you can put it on, you know, 24 hours or even longer. If we have storms forecasted that the snow is going to show up on, like a Sunday afternoon or a Sunday evening, we can have our crews during normal work hours, go apply that on Thursdays and Fridays if we need, and it's still there to be able to be used when the storm does show up, 48 hours later. In 2022 is when I guess you would say that we jumped into it and really said we're going to go all in on greatly reducing our salt use. So we put out our directive and we talked to our operators and says 100 pounds per lane mile for if it's any of our snow type events. If we have an ice event, naturally we would have to increase that to get it to work with ice events. But if it's a snow event, we said 100 pounds. That's what we're shooting for. Again, one of the things that helped work with this was when we went to our pre-wet, we have our pre-wet is injected right into the auger box or the trough. And as the auger is moving the salt, it coats that salt completely with the pre-wetting agent. Our pre-wet agent is also the same as what we anti-ice. We feel that using the 80-20 mixture of salt brine and the Biomelt and coating the salt with that instead of just a standard brine or calcium chloride, it helps with the cold weather operation. So when it does get cold, it helps that salt work cold when it's a lot colder out. But it does also give a little bit of a residual. And when things do dry off, it's not uncommon to not have any of the dry salt blowing away and the salt clouds that you see. It kind of does help utilize, and it does kind of leave a residual encapsulating effect. It also reduces some of the corrosiveness of the pure salt. Calcium chloride was the worst, so getting rid of that helped drastically, getting rid of the liquid calcium chloride. So it does help reduce things a little bit. As far as experiencing caking or bridging of our augers, we haven't really had too many problems with that because we are mixing it in the auger, and that anti-icing mixture is kind of a anti-caking, and people use it to treat their piles. It helps the augers from bridging and freezing up in there, which sometimes was a common problem when we were just spraying at the spinner. If you had a very wet snow or you were out for a long period of time and you maybe weren't applying salt, it would bridge up in the augers, and a lot of us have been there trying to chisel it out. So we can go on to the next. So the other things we've done now, we have a very robust and eager GIS group, and the support of them is phenomenal. They've helped us out greatly in coming up with doing routes in GIS and doing routes available. All of our operators have a iPad, and snow operations is just one of the uses that the iPad is used in. It's used in a lot of other operations for them for day to day in our stormwater, in our street repairs and such. But with that iPad, the operators can pull up specific snow routes. So if they're assigned to a snow route that is not their normal route, they have a way to pull that up and they can look at it. They can see where that route is. They can select to see, the whole city, just their specific route. We're working with being able to have that route change colors once somebody has been down that route and salted or plowed that route. So they'll kind of help if somebody's coming out to help out towards the end of an operation, getting towards the end. People can say, hey, I'm over in the blue route, and they can, be able to see where that person has been without, maybe where do you want me to go? Where are we? What street are we on? Helps down on some of the radio chatter. The operators, really seem to like having this at their fingertips to be able to look at that. And it also is being able to use to collect a lot of the data. We're still playing with it, trying to improve on it, and we can see a lot of use for that as things move on. So kind of a little bit of our, to be able to utilize this lower salt use, some of the things that we've kind of that we had changed over time. Years ago it was we would wait until either the police department called us or we knew it was getting really bad, then somebody would have to come in. So things that we've changed now, we'll have a smaller group of personnel ready to go, and they might even stand by. So if it's a normal work day, maybe the snow is not supposed to start till 6 or 7, we'll find a small team to stand by and be available from our shop to be able to go out right away and start operations if we need to. Sometimes they're needed, sometimes they're not. Otherwise, the other things, if it's a later on in the night that the snow is going to happen, we'll do pre-planning, and we have teams that are on call that are designed to handle, the small where it wouldn't be a full plowing operation. If it's just a, de-icing type of operation, plow down, we call them, where they're, clearing out the less than 2 inches or so. Those teams would be, set up and say, hey, report in at this time. And we'll usually try to have them report in before we know conditions are going to, probably deteriorate pretty bad. So it helps us kind of keep a little jump on it. There was, some questions and concerns is it paying extra, overtime and such? That's not really what we're concerned about. Our primary thing is to make sure we have to provide safe travel to residents and personnel within the city. So, decisions were not made based on whether we can save money here, whether it's an overtime or not an overtime. It's truly about what is the best overall operation and what will work the best for us. So again, our team plowing would start typically on all of our main roads when we have a better idea. If it's a typical storm event that comes in and is done, within that one time, we'll usually, try to get started on a full operation of being everywhere, usually within, several hours of when we figure it's going to end. Since we had the teams we're in prior, the smaller teams we're in prior, they have all the main roads. That's what they focus on. So they have all of our main snow routes, our main roads. They've been keeping up with them. So they're usually in very good shape and condition. So when our full crew come in, we're really jumping off into our side streets, and they're being able to start handling all the side street plowing and such. And then at the very end, we'll usually, have the crews, recheck your main routes again. You might have, maybe there's a spot here and there you might have to hit again, but the majority of the main roads then, as they're kind of wrapping up, are usually in pretty good condition and need little if much maintenance on them. So what some of the other things that we have done since we had all the Force America controllers, Horse America had an option that they have what's known as Precise, which is their GPS, but it also connects directly to controller, and it collects all the data of the salter and the pre-wet. So it gives us the ability to monitor how much we've actually put out in each truck and each operator, where they were applying that product, and monitor, how effective, doing this reduction. Are the operators, using it at 100, or is it are they, applying a lot more than the 100 to make it be effective? So if Ben, if you want to stop sharing your screen for a second, then I can share a couple screenshots of this application. So with this first one here, just check here, is that coming through there, Allison and Ben? Does that look proper?
Yep.
Okay. So this is an example of, I'm just pulling up one truck here. So this is truck 129. This was January of this year, January 12th. And so that truck left our shop at 6:51. So in this column here, it'll always give the GPS coordinates, telling which direction it's going, the speed, ignition on, picks up the odometer, engine hours, so we're able to track all that, idle hours. So it has all this stuff in here. But really the things we like to pay attention to is over here, spreader status, controller distance stuff. So in the spreader status column, you'll see when it's the 0, that means it's off. When it's in the S, that means it's spreading. So as an example here, so if I open this here, where it's spreading, this is giving us the data, what the time is, again, that location, their direction, what their speed was, the ignition. But really, again, what we kind of look down here is this data that's coming out through here. So the spreader status, S, means it was spreading. This is a number, is basically the controller distance over its lifetime that it's going. So the selection, so we have selection granular material salt. So if for some reason we were spreading sand or something else, they would be selecting that. It would show what they were. This again is just a total that just is a count for that controller. Right here is the granular setting. So this is the 100 pounds per lane mile that controller was set at while they were applying. So granular mode, as they say, that's just a reference letter in the program that we do. So pre-wet material, again, if you wanted to, your controller could have different materials as pre-wet. We just have one, we just call it pre-wet. Same thing here, it's just looking at pre-wet totals. Right here is the pre-wet setting. So we apply at 8 gallons per ton is how it's calibrated through there. So again, that's just kind of giving you, this is just a one quick one where we're able to pull that. So if we really wanted to, look close at everything there is, that's what we would do. I'll share another screen here. So that change the screen, or is that still the same screen?
It's still the precise. There we go.
There we go. Okay. I had to get on there. I want to make sure I was there. So now this one here again is kind of gives us the same information, same truck, same dates. But this here is telling me that, so that truck up here went 81 miles during this operation. How many engine hours? It was spreading salt for 54 miles. So of that 81, it was 54 is what it was spreading the salt at. It spread 9,394 pounds of salt. Its average application rate was 171.1. Now, yes, that's higher than the 100 that it's set at, but it takes into account, so 6 times the operator had hit the blast button. So when it goes into a blast, that's in a timed blast, and I think those are set at 500 pounds, and it's timed, I think, for 10 seconds. So that will add into some of that. But again, nothing can be absolutely 100% precise. So again, it's kind of showing we've calibrated them at 100, we set them at 100, but our average is still close to that 200. So I think that kind of showed us that we're actually putting on a little bit more, and it tends to be consistent that even though we calibrate them for 100, that's what they do. They'll tend to put out a little bit more, so that it kind of reaffirmed what we were saying when we were putting 300, and even when we had all these calibrated and using these, smart spreaders, we were seeing we were probably putting out maybe 400. So again, you have to have the data to kind of be able to see what you're doing and making sure it is correct. And then now the one last one that I can quick show. So this precise gives us the ability, again, same truck, same dates and all of that. We can replay those routes to see where did this truck go? How did they, do this? And we can start comparing that to when was the salter on, when was the salter off. But it helps us with the ability to monitor what's going on. This map can also be monitored live time. So we can sit in an office and be able to, hey, where are all of our trucks? We can pull all of our trucks up and see where have they been, where maybe we would want to dispatch them out to. So it is kind of another tool. It really doesn't function much different than all the other GPS systems that are out there, other than it ties in directly with the precise salter control. So it helps us being able to pull some of that data. So that's kind of the whole idea behind all of that. So if Ben wants to bring back up that presentation, I can kind of wrap up the last few thoughts on this.
Does that look good, JR?
Yep, go ahead and click. There
Yeah,
you go.
that swap. There you go.
So
That's great.
So again, as I say, using the GPS and the data there, we're continuing to review, how effective is our rates. We're still seeing the salt working at that lower application rate. We're getting the roads cleared off. We work with and check our police department. Are we seeing an increase in crashes? Are you getting more reports? Do we get more complaints from residents? Other than, this year where we had that 20 inches of snow and that week and a half in extreme cold temperatures, we were all kind of stuck in a situation with that. But really, we haven't seen any big swings or changes since we've went to this lower salt use. So I'm gonna go to the last slide there, I think is the last one. So again, things that we're looking at, we go through quite a bit of brine. We purchase our brine through Dane County Highway. We do have a contractor that hauls it for us in a semi. So we buy it at a semi load at a time, that 5,500 gallons or so. But since they are close by, it works out nice. They come in, we have 3 6,000 gallon tanks that store our salt brine. But so we are looking at brine making equipment. We had kind of held off because we were in the process of looking at building a new facility. That's kind of on hold got delayed for a few years. So we still are looking at purchasing some brine equipment. We want to work really heavy with our route planning and GIS. That's, some of the things that we're working heavily on. And as always, we're still going to continue to review, study, the effects of the reduced salt use. are we still being able to provide a safe environment for our residents and such? Looking at new equipment, such as we mentioned, we bought the roll-off truck, which is a roll-off just like you would see for a roll-off for a garbage truck. And we have a V-box. And that V-box is set up with pre-wet and the salt. Again, the applications as we're looking, as Ben had said, we have a contractor that plows the northern part of our city, but we have to go out and salt that area. They plow it. This truck doesn't have a plow, but it has a large amount of salt capacity. So utilizing this truck in those areas there, currently now it relies on one of our trucks that's out doing a plowing route. When they're done with their route, they would have to go salt that. With this big truck, we're looking at this allows us to get up there right away after they're plowing and not have to wait till one of our other operators is done. So again, kind of a new piece of equipment to look at how we could use that different. And there's a lot of talk with the new types of, pug mills to grind it, going to all liquids. We're researching and looking at is that something to, an all liquid application. It would involve a lot of things, but kind of just the final observations. Anti-icing, we've strongly believe that it does play a large role to, getting out there and salting or handling those small ones, which in the long run then helps reduce how much salt you will have to use to, get your roads clear. Again, our crews were, they were kind of suspect to say, especially crews that had been around for longer times that were used to the 300 pounds. Is this going to work? But we have an excellent crew. We included them in all of this research and, discussion. So they were a big part of that. We wanted them to have the buy-in and we wanted them to have some say into that. And I know, we can't say enough of our crew of how important it is that they, accepted this and they understood that, and then that they're part of that. And they've really seemed now they're quite proud to be a leader and say, we've done this and we're making a difference, and it does work. We can make it work. There's that was a huge step in being able to do that, is having them on board with us. And I think we worked hard to make sure that they were part of the discussions of this and they fully understood why we were doing it. Last thing, don't become impatient. It took a while. We were used to seeing that when you really put the salt on, everything melts really fast. But we also were seeing that when we were with that, is it might take a little bit longer, but it wasn't creating unsafe conditions. It just didn't give that visual bare pavement. And when you're applying that much, you can't see it coming off the spreader when you're an operator coming off that spinner. So sometimes you wonder, are we actually salting or not? So one of the things that we did do that I didn't have in here, we put backup cameras on our truck, but we also made sure that the backup camera can see the spinner. So that was another confidence to the crew that, okay, I can't see the salt because it's at such a small amount, but in my camera, I can see that I am salting. So I know I'm salting, so I don't have to, wonder about that. But again, overall, as I say, is, be cautious about, when you want to change something, and, make sure you observe it, but, have confidence in, if you make a decision, have the confidence. Even if you make a decision and it might not be the perfect one, still, have some confidence in that and be able to justify and say, well, we're trying this and we're look at the big picture. We're trying to make a difference. So, and that's kind of wrapping up as much as I can have to say.
All right. Well, thank you so much, JR and Ben. So I've had a question, and then we have one that came in on email. So I guess just to kind of clarify here, so you had been at 300, which I totally agree, kind of industry standard, right? And then that shift to 100, one thing I heard you say a couple times was kind of like giving the material time to work. Since you don't see that instantaneous like melting by just like really dosing it. Did you slow down or I mean change your route cycle time to kind of leave that salt there working before coming back and kind of plowing it up again?
I don't think we changed. Our routes were big enough that I think they get, by the time they kind of get back to that. So when I was kind of replaying that, you might have noticed that if you played it long enough, a truck had gone down a street, but then if you're watching it again, you know, maybe 45 minutes later, it goes down that street again. And so, you know, there's kind of, you know, looking at that of rechecking that, that might have been where they were, you know, re-verifying, you know, how things were done. But overall, I think the way our routes are split up for us, that, you know, once they're out there and they're applying it, you know, having it work, we didn't have to say like, oh, we have to, you know, change our routes there. We've pretty much been able to keep our routes because they are laid out far enough. But
Mhm.
yeah, you do bring up a point. You know, if it's in a situation where it's maybe a smaller route and, you know, you're 15, 20 minutes later, you're kind of back in the area. I think that's where we're referring to, you know, you might have to give it a little bit more time to make it work through there.
Okay, yeah. Cause I mean, it sounds like from 300 to 100, it's not like you made other changes, right? You added the pre-wet, you've been doing the anti-icing to help kind of, I guess, remove more material and then make the material go down, work more efficiently. Do you make any changes to a mechanical removal at that time or during that time as well? Any?
No, so our so our crews of it's kind of one of the changes. You know, years ago it used to be if it was a salting operation, we might not even have the front plows on the trucks. You know, I'm talking back in the late 90s, early 2000s. If it was that 1 inch snow where it was just you're going to salt, we didn't have the plow down. You know, so there has been some changes over years of where the plow is down. If we have to go out, the plow is down. You know, even if it's a small amount, so we are mechanically scraping that off. You
Mhm.
know, we run carbides on all of our blades. We've seen a little bit more wear there, but you know, with the carbide, nothing extremely excessive that we've seen there. And I think just the one, as you hit on for the, you know, where we are anti-icing, we are, you know, adding the pre-wet there. Um, there's some cost up front that you might be spending a little bit more because you're applying that pre-wet with that biomelt. So it costs you a little bit more. We're just straight salt brine. But really looking at then what the effectiveness is and the savings in salt, because the salt cost is not cheap either. So really in the long run, the trend kind of shows you might pay a little bit more at the beginning of the year to get your supplies, but when you start looking at over the whole course of the year, because you're using less salt, so you're starting to save money. We have two 1,300-ton salt sheds or 1,600-ton salt sheds. You know, before it wasn't uncommon that we'd have to fill one of them. Uh, we have not gotten to the back of either one of those salt sheds until this year was the first year that we were able to get back. We've reduced our purchasing of salt from, you know, 1,800 tons a year. We're buying 1,000 tons a year now or less. So in the over the long range, you know, that cost offset when you're looking at it, you know, we're reduced how much salt is getting in the environment, but we actually are saving some money too because we don't go through as much salt. And we're still doing just as many operations. You know, we're still, you know, as an average, you know, this year was a unique year. We didn't go through a lot of salt, but I mean, you know, looking at, you know, a 10-year span of an average, the number of operations that we've done for salting is still be consistent. Even though we've had milder winters, we still have those salting events. We just aren't plowing the deeper snow, but we still continue to have the 1-inch dustings that require salting.
Yeah,
Just-
I mean, yeah, Ben.
Just to jump in there, kind of where JR is talking about our salt usage, we're kind of having the conversations now of, do we even need to purchase any salt for the upcoming season? I mean, that's how far down our numbers have gone, to the point where we may not need to re-up this year, which is great for a number of reasons. Obviously for the environment, but then also for our budget. So
I mean, 1,800 to like 1,000 or less. I mean, that's like a 50% reduction. So you're, taking you 2 seasons to go through the same amount of salt.
Right.
Okay, and then the question that had come in, which I think you then answered a little later on, was like, why did you move away from calcium chloride? And are you still getting that performance that you need at colder temperatures? So I think you alluded to like the corrosivity of calcium. Would you say that's the primary factor that you kind of switched from that 80-10-10 to the 80-20?
That was some of it. The other thing too is for the anti-icing, as you're mixing up. So now you're blending 3 products. So you're blending your salt brine, your calcium chloride, and then whatever your organic, whether it's the beet juice or such. So taking the calcium chloride away made it much easier. You're only blending salt brine and one other product. And it was also a cost. So the AG60, the Geomelt we're using now is a little more expensive than what the Geo55 was, a straight beet juice. But because we don't have to buy calcium chloride, it actually was cheaper in the amount of product we bought total. So there was a little bit of that. And yes, the cold weather, what we're using now works and has that exothermic reaction that the calcium chloride was doing, and that's why you were adding it before. It was really to give you that low temperature kick, but the product we've changed over to works in that aspect. So was the other reason we were able to eliminate it.
Because the Geomelt, it has some calcium, right? It's a mix of calcium and sugar together.
Yeah, it's got some other ingredients already in it. So it's the organic sugar, and it still looks, it's the same color concentrate. It looks like the beet juice, but it has a lot less solids in it. So that was one of the other reasons. The straight beet juice has more solids suspended in it. So, your filters and stuff like that we had to keep up on that a lot more. So some of the maintenance. So this has helped reduce the maintenance, but
just that ease of, like you said, 2 things. And if you're not making your own brine, you're just mixing kind of one additional component constituent in there. So excellent. Well, that's all I've got for questions. Thank you guys again. Really do appreciate it. And I guess I'll probably be seeing you around this fall somewhere. And just a reminder that we do have a class in the equipment open house happening in Fitchburg. So if you have any new crew members that you want to send to the training, that'll be happening, I think, in October, but there'll be another email going out about it. So
great.
yeah. All right.
All right.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Yeah.
thank you.
Bye-bye.